Next, let's welcome Anne Vogt, Head of Compliance and Data Protection at FreeNow. Anne has been working in the ethics and compliance field for over 15 years. After completing her LLM in International Legal Studies at Georgetown University in 2016, she took on the role of Chief Compliance Officer at Lidl in the US for 3 years, before assuming an operational role back in Europe in 2019. In March 2022, Anne moved to FreeNow, where she has been heading the Compliance and Data Protection departments. According to Anne, the goal of every compliance officer should be to build a compliance team that is a strategic partner to the business, capable of helping the organization to uphold its values while harnessing innovation and the benefits of new technologies in a responsible and ethical manner.
So I have to confess that being the last person to speak as an individual presenter after such incredible intervention and participation is very intimidating. But I'm going to do my best, and I'm very happy to be here today and discuss a topic I believe is of utmost importance to the compliance community. So you have already heard a lot today. I think some of the things I'm going to say is a little bit of a summary of everything that was said. But again, I'm going to do my best. As you learned in the intro, I'm the head of compliance and data protection at FreeNow. For those who don't know FreeNow, and please download immediately the app so you know what it is. We are a multi-mobility platform that allows its users to access all types of mobility services within one single app, including taxis, ride-hailing, car-sharing, e-scooters, e-bikes, e-mopeds, and public transport. We are a European company headquartered in Germany and with offices and operations in 8 European markets and over 150 cities. And almost 2 years ago, I decided to join FreeNow for 3 reasons. So, one, because I'm a big city person. I've always lived in big cities, and I truly believe that our cities need alternative mobility models to be sustainable in the future. 2, because I always worked for a highly digitalized organization, very much focused on efficiency, but I'd never worked for a tech company, and this was my chance. And 3, because the person that would become my manager gave me the assurance that I had the support from the top and autonomy and freedom to shape and adjust the compliance and data protection functions in a way that I believe makes sense for an organization such as ours. And he stood to his promise, and this is one of the reasons why I had the opportunity to dive into topics such as AI. So AI simultaneously frightens and fascinates me, not only on a professional, but also on a personal level. In preparation of this presentation, I tried several generative AI power tools and apps, and maybe, I think, far too many, actually. And it's overwhelming what you can do in 10 minutes. I'm a big fan of the use of visuals in compliance communication instead of big words. And over the years, I've become quite good at doing presentations and other materials. But come on, what I was able to do in a few minutes is mind-blowing, and I would never have been able to do something like this a few months ago, probably. So this is one of the reasons why AI simultaneously fascinates and terrifies me, because if I'm able to do something like this in a blink of an eye, imagine what else can be done in a blink of an eye. So of course, and we hear this, and there are many benefits to AI, and AI can play a critical role in tackling climate change, in social injustice, improving access to education, advancing research, and improving complex decision-making. In California, firefighters are deploying AI to detect fires before they can spread. AI is being used to detect early signs of cancer, and access to education in rural areas can be expanded thanks to AI. However, and now comes the button, I think the previous presenter also said this, so I'm just repeating what he said. AI, and especially generative AI, also brings enormous risk with it and can have a considerable environmental, social, and governance impacts. So while AI can be used to fight climate change, it also requires massive amounts of energy, and I think we often forget about this. While it has the ability to tackle social problems, it can also have biased tendencies and amplify racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination. AI can support the fight against corruption, but it can also be misused and used to conceal and create false identities. It can help foster security, but it can also lead to mass surveillance, not to mention the privacy implications and risk of data leaks. there's also the risk of potential copyright infringements, and let's not forget it can hallucinate. So I could go on and on now, but my point is that while there are many benefits to AI, there's also huge risk, many of which are still unknown. So faced with the complexity of AI and its potential risk, maybe the easiest, or we would say I resign, and decide not to have anything to do with it, not use it and ignore its existence, which at this point is basically impossible. We could also decide to only see the positives and blindly trust AI, which would be slightly crazy, especially in light of the fact that even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, confessed that he is a little bit afraid of AI, and mentioned in an interview with Lex Friedman that it would be crazy not to be a little bit afraid. Or we acknowledge that there are clear benefits and advantages, but also huge risks to AI. Try to understand the risk and find ways to contain them to the best of our capabilities and use AI for good. So for me, and I hope for most people, it's clearly option 3. As a conscious human being, I'm very concerned about where the world is heading. And the list of things that often keep me up at night is long, and AI is only one of them. I'm of the profound belief that we need technology and innovation to tackle many of these challenges. And AI can play a fundamental role as long as it's used for good, as long as it is contained, as long as we are conscious of the associated risks. This concern of mine is the main reason why I put so much effort, research, and time in better understanding AI, into experimenting different things and into sharing my thoughts. But this is not an easy test for someone with a legal background, right? So, because it's not only about understanding laws and regulations, it's actually about understanding from where comes the data from, for what is this being used, how it's going to be tested, the development and operational effects that surround AI. And to be honest, this goes far beyond my role as head of compliance and data protection. And I've decided to focus part of my research that I'm doing in a master's program on responsible technology. And I don't expect every compliance officer and DPO around me to do as much experimenting and digging into AI as I do. Again, maybe a little too much sometimes. But AI will eventually, or is already having a relevant impact on our role and the compliance functions. So I believe it's important that we all have a close look at it, and we all familiarize ourselves with the topic and hear about it constantly and constantly and constantly. So, what does AI mean for corporate compliance and compliance officer? So first of all, let me make it clear. I'm not part of the club that argues that for now, AI means game over for the compliance officer. On the contrary, I believe it will create more work and new challenges for the compliance function and the compliance officers. And it might be a game changer for those willing to take on those challenges. When I graduated law school in 2007, there were not many companies in Europe that had their own compliance departments. So the first real context I had with the compliance function was in the context of a US company in 2008, shortly after the Siemens settlement. And at the time, the main focus was anti-bribery and corruption, conflicts of interest, and some data privacy. Those are still very important topics, but over the years, corporate compliance evolved drastically and into a whole other beast. So many of the topics and issues that nowadays often fall under our jurisdiction as compliance always existed, but they were not regulated. Or there was no regulation that forced us actually to tackle those issues. However, so anyone that works in compliance knows the amount of regulations that we have to face nowadays and we have to keep up with is staggering, and it's only going to increase over the next years. But I also know from my experience, from own experience, that the increase in responsibility doesn't always come in an increase of resources, right, and stuff. So we have to, with the same people, we have to tackle many more topics. And in order to be able to advance and enhance and promote our compliance programs and ethics in our organizations, many of us don't only want to, but really have to embrace the power of technological advancement and innovation. Otherwise, we won't be able to keep up. And this includes AI-powered solutions. The increase in capabilities and availability of AI tools for data analytics, for instance, can help compliance officers identify potential risks and patterns. And we have seen this in previous presentations. They can help evaluate the effectiveness of the compliance program and help analyze compliance data to provide insights that can help drive better decision-making. AI can be used to automate a lot of routine tasks, like producing reports, answering like the typical compliance question that comes up and up and up. So this frees up the compliance officer actually to focus on more strategic tasks. So it's great. And ChatGPT, BART, and other generative AI models, as well as translation tools like DeepL, can indeed help compliance teams. I have tried them. We have used them. So it's very, very helpful, indeed, if you know how to use them. So again, to reiterate, AI can be a valuable tool and will be a valuable tool for compliance officer. And again, we need those tools in order to be able to advance compliance in the future. And the right tools can play a fundamental role not only for compliance teams that have huge amount of data they have to analyze, but also for smaller compliance teams that don't have the means to maybe hire a lot of people into their teams to have well-funded compliance departments. Because many of those tools are available for relatively, I don't want to call it free, but they are out there. However, and this is, now comes the however, it's important to emphasize the right AI tools that they have to be properly vetted and evaluated before being deployed in the compliance organization. Because after all, the output, when we hear this, garbage in, garbage out. So the output is only as good as the input, and the output must be appropriately verified before it's used. It's also important to ensure that any AI tool complies with all applicable regulations, including data protection regulations. However, the quality of options and the quantity, but especially the quality of options currently available on the market, still varies widely. And finding the right tool is not always easy, not even for an experienced compliance officer. Therefore, it's extremely important to have the internal or external expertise to access the tools and associated documentation and to properly assess what can be done with them. And also the results. Somebody really has to look at the results that ChatGPT might spit out, right? So this is also because AI can't provide the context that only a human analyst can. And I'm saying nowadays, I'm not talking about 5 to 10 years, so I don't have a glass ball and I don't want to make any predictions. But for now, it can't provide the context that only a human analyst can. Nor can AI explain the logic of the AI model and the decision-making process, or evaluate for itself whether the results it produced truly support the organization's compliance efforts. These are government issues and challenges that the compliance officer need to consider before and during the employment of AI solutions in the compliance programs, and more broadly, in the organization at large. So because general AI governance is something that compliance organizations very likely are going to be heavily involved in, or already heavily involved in. I have been involved in quite a lot of questions surrounding this topic. So of course, the level of involvement will vary greatly depending on the organization and how the organization is set up and what responsibilities fall under compliance today. Because we always talk about compliance, but compliance can be, one compliance department might only be responsible for anti-bribery and corruption, and other compliance departments might have a huge lack of responsibilities. So it always depends. I never want to throw everyone into the same pot. But in any case, it's definitely going to be a whole different level of challenge. And but it's also an opportunity for compliance officers and could reshape our role in a significant way. So I see it as a great opportunity, actually, in fact, for me, because we can always learn with it. But going back to AI governance, so in addition to overarching regulations, oversight, sustained self-regulation, monitoring of the ethical implications and use of AI tools in a business context is, in my opinion, essentially to keep pace with the rapid technological development and risk associated with AI. The AI Act will eventually be adopted, but it's not going to be perfect. It won't address all the things. So we can't put all of our hope in it. And I don't think that organizations should or can wait until then. It's extremely important to set the ground rules and adopt internal AI policies and guidelines. According to a McKinsey study from August 2023, not even 25% of companies that use generative AI have adopted internal AI regulations. The study is based on surveys from April 2023, so I believe that by now the picture is a little different, or looks a little different, but still, it's a low number, right? So it's not enough. And it still seems too low. So besides of the AI Act, which will come, so you can already read about it, you can analyze it, but there are other guidelines and principles and laws that already apply today, and they can serve as a foundation. Should the compliance organization be responsible and the ones developing these guidelines and policies? Not necessarily, and certainly not alone. This must be a collaborative effort between compliance, data protection, legal information security, risk, and many others. I know we as compliance sometimes, it depends on where we sit. Legal is not always our best friend, even though at FreeNow we really get together, all of us, but we really have to work with all of them together. And also it means working sometimes with teams where we usually as compliance are not that familiar with, right? The AI teams, data governance teams. At FreeNow, we all work together very closely because data protection for us is also a very big topic, but it's departments that we might not even know that well. The truth is the compliance organization is often the one that already has the necessary process and procedures in place, among other things, to set ground rules, so to implement policies, create awareness, identify and mitigate potential risks, and also implement the support the implementation of controls, and ensure proper documentation, because documentation is really important in this context. So from my perspective, but that's my personal opinion, and probably a lot of people will disagree, it makes sense that compliance organization ends up being the one that somehow has oversight of AI governance. And most importantly, ensures that there's transparency, sufficient communication for employees and customers, and that the systems are auditable. Because in the end, really, there needs to be some sort of the possibility of auditing those systems. Now, my goal is not to become AI police, right? In fact, compliance should never be the police. That's not our job. And I don't think that any compliance officer likes to be called a police officer. It's a super important job, but it's not ours. I also think it might be a little bit too much to think of ourselves as AI and ethics governance superheroes. Also, I really love this picture. So I think the most realistic goal is to aim for a compliance function that is a strategic partner to the business, capable of helping the organization to uphold its values while harnessing innovation and the benefits of new technologies in a responsible and ethical manner. I reckon that this is uncharted terrain. It requires re-evaluation not only of the compliance strategy, but also of the type of knowledge and resources required within a compliance organization. In the past, many compliance professionals had either a legal background or business management background, and that was enough. In the future, however, in order to advance compliance and ethics, we will need more diverse teams with much broader skill sets, capable of being that strategic business partner that is supportive, but also capable of understanding and addressing the elephants that might be in the room. We need teams that really can analyze and support the IT functions, the data sciences, and understand them. So, of course, I don't mean that we suddenly have to replace all of compliance professionals, run out of the room, and then no, by no means, really. I'm not trying to replace anyone, but we need to take the time, or we should take the time to educate ourselves and broaden our knowledge and horizons. Again, that's easier said than done, I know. Taking the time is not always that easy. But if you haven't done so yet, maybe start by asking ChatGPT and working with ChatGPT and ask for some help in writing a relatively simple policy. Or ask for some help in communication. Learn how to write adequate prompts, because that's something, the prompts I used and tried and experimented a lot of different prompts. So it's really important what you input into the system. And then you always have to adjust it. So it's not just saying, I want to write a compliance program, go ahead, and then it writes you the perfect compliance program. Now we really have to work, we draft, we question some things, but eventually you might come to a result which can be helpful for your compliance organization. Explore different AI governance tools that are already out there on the market. Again, the quality varies, but have some demos, look at them, try them out. And maybe next time when you have a vacancy in your team, rethink the job description. Think twice before you post it. Consider different profiles, also from different departments within your organization. In the end, we all chose to go and stay or return to ethics and compliance for a reason. After 3 years in operation, I returned to ethics and compliance for some very strong reasons. This is not an AI-generated picture, actually, so this is the only one that's real. And this is my one of the very strong reasons why I returned. So almost a year ago, my daughter started asking us on a Sunday morning, can we go and pick up trash in our neighborhood? Because anyone who lives in Berlin, depending on the neighborhood, knows that there is a lot of it. So, and this became like a common thing. So almost every Sunday, we now go out, pick up trash. Because she genuinely cares about the climate and justice and fairness in the world that surrounds her. And I genuinely care about the world she's growing up in. And my belief is that business can play a fundamental role in driving the innovation technology we need to address the crises we face. And I'm convinced that responsible, sustainable organizations that prioritize integrity and compliance in this regard are not just checking boxes. They're building the foundation for long-term success and trust. Thank you very much.